Hello and welcome to Chat Sith Get Banged, the Final Fantasy TCG podcast brought to you by Team Calamity. I am your host, Tom Hall, and joining me today from Team Calamity for this Christmas special is Mitch Lander.
Hello.
And obviously because it's Christmas, we need to get people in that people like, so we've invited the YYTs, Michael and Andy. Hello.
Happening, team.
Yeah, hello. We've lost Michael.
Oh, hello. Oh, sorry. Did it not cook shit? Right, my mic's been fucky here. I'm sorry. Hello.
How we doing, guys?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. You said you brought people in people like, and I think you chose the wrong guys here. I'm not going to lie to you, Tom.
Well, to be fair, Steve Dolman was busy, so we'll
Winning a tournament? You know, let's go.
Steve's busy, and we're hoping James is going to listen, and then we'll invite him in. But yeah, no, we're hanging off. Hanging up the YYT. Yeah, no, never mind the top cut. What matters is YYT. But yes, this is a Christmas special. We do have some Christmas themed stuff planned later on. But really, yeah, we thought, why not? Let's talk about how the year's been. The year suddenly got very exciting towards the end of the year. It's been pretty drab for the rest of it. And then we can obviously review the recent Cymru Cup. Have I said that right?
Yeah, Cymru, I think
Cymru,
it is.
Yeah. Cymru Cup, Cymru, as it's now known.
Cymru, if you are a live streamer, apparently, or whoever said it. Sorry.
But we'll talk about that, and then yes, here we go. So, 2021 for FFTCG. It's been another pretty rank one until about November, at which point it sort of started to pick up a bit. How have you found it over your side?
It's been interesting. I don't know. We've been locked down for the entirety of the year. I think we're doing like a cover of like 2021 as a whole Final Fantasy, yeah. Because if so, like the start of the year we were in lockdown till like late spring, early summer, and then the cards were interesting, but actually I can't remember playing cards much during the summer, but it was fairly fun, fairly interesting, and then Opus 14 came out and they printed Stern Leonis. So the will to go play and locals grew worse and worse each day because you're guaranteed to lose the game if you brought something fun and interesting. Then they banned it, which I think we're going to get onto soon, right? They banned it, and then Bojo announced that we're probably going to go into another lockdown. So
Yeah, we'll save the 2022 outlook for later on. It's going to be very positive. but yeah, probably is a beautiful sum up of the year, really. But yeah, let's talk about, obviously the things have changed fairly recently with the bans. I think probably there's not really many people who disagree with this. Although looking at sort of the NA groups, I know Rochelle was saying there were complaints coming into the Hobby Japan team and Square Enix team about the bans, but it seems pretty positive. Everyone seems to be pretty happy with it. What do we think of the bans? We spoke about it briefly in our Legend review last time, Mitch, but it's positive. Is anyone not positive with it?
Oh, it's really good because we got into a format that was quite a lot like old Yu-Gi-Oh, where like you had to play floodgates. Like, did any of you guys play old Yu-Gi-Oh before I go into a tirade about what floodgates are?
We
take that as no.
we were joking before we came on. There may be some translation issues because we're working with the Scottish guys.
Yeah,
but
I know what floodgates are.
Yeah, I know what floodgates are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what Andy's saying there is, it got to the point that you played hyper aggro, or you played floodgates, which are like decks that have the necessary tools to handle hyper aggro. So you had aggro and anti-aggro. Okay. The only two decks you're allowed to play that set realistically. If you played anything else, you chopped your locals, and some guy who happened to have Dogga Sophie would beat you to death and then steal all your money and your cards.
Okay, so when you say floodgate decks, I'm thinking an aggro spam. You just like as if the floodgate's broken, but it's actually the opposite. This is a
yeah. So that's the flood. That's the flood. The floodgates are the thing that stop the flood.
Yeah, this is going to come the most unintentional, like best double comedy act ever. Some guy tried to talk, a Scottish guy tried to talk English, and Michael translating for him.
I've only done it in tournament twice, I promise.
But yeah, we'll get into that story That's a great story. But basically, the main issue I had with like Rush, I was playing Samurais when I won my reunion event. If like you could play stuff like Susano and you could play Filia to clear a board, but you needed to get rid of Stern first against Chocobos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Stern was a big problem, just because of, like I said, how hard it is to get rid of, and what I hated most about it was the sort of over the top trigger. So you could try and get Stern, but then it can just do the effect over the top. So you're always getting something. It's very difficult.
Yeah, so I think with Andy's deck, you were running like backup Cloud and stuff. The one that if you discard a card or discard 2 cards, whatever, you can break a Dark Forward and stuff, right? You ran 2 of those, and
It was
like
I think it was on entry kill a guy, or it was like pay to kill a guy. I was
When
playing
it
one
enters
card
pay
per
to
key.
fire.
yeah, that was it. Pay to fire, you can break a Dark Forward. You're playing stuff like that, and loads of things that just outright killed Stern that Samurais had its availability, and that means that your surrounding board wipes can then go over the top of Stern's buff ability, essentially.
Yeah, you would get rid of the Stern, and then when they couldn't buff over Filia or Susan, you would just play our Susan.
Yeah, I kind of dipped playing for a bit actually during that period of time, like just towards the end of Opus 14. Like not so much that I wasn't playing locals and stuff, but I had the opportunity to play in like several tournaments. I was in Germany at the time of the reunion event in Scotland, but I could have gone to the Netherlands to go play the and what was going to be the biggest event in Europe. But I ended up just commentating for that instead because it was like the game wasn't interesting enough to warrant spending money to go places or I mean obviously COVID allowed and stuff, but like it wasn't entertaining enough to warrant spending any money on the game, and I didn't buy a box or pre-order a box or anything as soon as until the bans happened, really.
Yeah, actually, that's a thing I've seen sort of replicated around a few people, that they just had sort of dipped out for a bit. Obviously, all the events are cancelled, so there's nothing really to work towards. But then a lot of players in this game are collectors anyway, so they keep buying the sets. But a lot of people just stopped. Like, actually, I'll just wait a couple of sets. You know, we'll talk about it if we talk about the 2022 outlook, but it could be fairly similar because I know Mitch, you sort of struggle with this. You like to build for a particular event. So, like now, it's like, well, what's the point? Because, you know, there might not be another event till the summer. It's going to be another couple of sets in. It's all going to have changed. So there has been that bit of a problem. So, yeah, Stern, fairly obvious. It's a bit of a shame because it did unlock lots of new decks, but obviously it was just quite abusable. So it's a fine balance, I guess, with these sort of cards. But like we saw, Chocobos finally sort of became like top tier. A couple of other decks as well. Just it sort of elevated them, and then obviously the abusability just took it over the top. So I think it's fair. It's gone. Toga had a bit of a mixed review. I think some people think Toga's not really the problem in the ban, but it just sort of fed into the sort of early value spam of the Sophie Toga sort of deck.
Toga's an interesting one. I don't feel strongly about it being banned or not, but with the printing of a card like Rydia, I am a little happier that it is banned, because like even without Sophie, just being able to sift through your deck that much to get summons in your break zone to set up for Rydias and Masteries that quickly, and to draw so much into your deck with like essentially zero effort from you, you've just drawn into the right cards. Like you've obviously built the deck that has that many summons, but I think it hurts future proofing. It's one of those cards that like without even really realizing it when they first printed it, it just means that they can't print good earth or water summons, because as soon as they do, they've suddenly got this card that lets someone play the game much faster than someone else, in particular because of Mastery as well. So I don't know if Doga's not a Sophie, Doga's not an issue without Mastery or without Sophie, but I'm not sad seeing it go. I feel bad for people who got full arts though.
Yeah, and it's a promo as well, isn't it? At some point, is that right? The full art promo.
Yeah, I think it's coming as a promo, and it's been banned.
Yeah, which is a bit awkward because it does look quite cool.
I think it's the first promo to be banned then, right?
Yeah, it must be.
I can't remember. Yeah.
I think it was announced literally like a day or two after the ban.
Oh, right.
Wow.
After the ban. Yeah, very awkward. Actually, you're right as well, because I remember seeing it come up and I thought it was someone was joking and like trolled like the promo card just after the ban, but no, it was legit. So yeah, it's very awkward. The only thing I'd say with Toga is if you are playing like a summoner sort of summon heavy, just discarding summons to play it is not. I didn't think it was always ideal for that kind of deck, because obviously if you mentioned Ridio, Michael, obviously you want the summons in hand, you want to cast them, so it's a bit counterintuitive to a summon deck in some ways, that you discarding the summons to pay for the Doga. So
fair enough, yeah. I don't feel strongly about the ban on Doga specifically, because I understand it could be an issue because Mastery's still about, but I mean they had the choice of banning Mastery or Doga, and they chose Doga.
I think as well it just snaps people out playing that deck. Everyone was playing Windwater, not Windwater, Earthwater, Sophie.
Yeah.
And it makes you suddenly think, oh, I can't play that now, I'll have to build something else.
I think their logic is that Doga fits in an Earth Water deck only. Mastery fits into potentially multiple decks. So they didn't want to hurt other decks for just what Doga can do.
So I think so, and I think that was the right choice overall, because Mastery is generally, as a card, it's not interesting, because it's the same issue as Stern, I still think, but as a deck building premise, it's interesting and it offers variation where there otherwise might not be.
Yeah, there's a thin line of where it's strong to being oppressive, and if you have to build your deck in a certain way, I think it's just strong because you built your deck that way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so then the other ban was a bit of a surprise one, because it wasn't obviously sort of broke about Miyun. I suppose obviously broke is not the right word. It wasn't obviously on the radar, but Miyun is broken in many ways. So yeah, that one getting the ban, like I said, a bit of a surprise. I'm quite happy to see it go. I don't like it.
It's interesting because I would say it's like I think this is the first preemptive ban, and I don't think that I don't mean that in Miyuni doesn't deserve to be banned, but I think that if Doga Sophie and if all the aggro decks get nerfed so heavily, Wind as a deck and as a format would just be so broken. Like think of Sky Pirates, you know. Like Miyuni being banned means Sky Pirates has to play a turn slower and can't be an aggro deck, and it can be, but like not in the same way it used to be able to, where you could go backup Van, activate 2 backups, play Miyuni, bounce back Van, and
then play the other one.
Yeah. Now if you went second, you can play another Van, or if you went first, you've now got a Van to do next turn, and maybe like a Chocolate or something to tap for the remaining CP. You know, I think that with aggro being nerfed, Wind would also have to be nerfed, or it would just be another problem deck, or not problem deck, but a problem play style that people couldn't play on anything else. You know, you have to play Wind or a Wind that beats other Wind. You know, which we've seen to a lesser extent in the past, and I think that them banning Miyuni alongside these other bans makes a lot of sense, and I'm very happy to see it. It's just from like a game making perspective, I'm glad they're able to see that far into the future almost.
It's always been a highly abusable card as well, isn't it? So I mean, every set someone tries to do the infinite loop, one turn kills or thing, that usually revolves around Wind. Definitely is always involved, and this card. So you can see. I'm sure people had. The loop's becoming more consistent and more easy to do, which is problematic, I guess.
It's not the only card that can enable inflits, but is the easiest infinite to enable in Final Fantasy TCG. The next easiest one is like the Regis Renoa loop, which is impossible to do in a real game realistically.
I think as well it was like a victim of circumstances, because if you're looking at Althea versus like Mione, both very toxic, but one happened to be in Chocobos. I agree with Michael. Future proofing. One happened to be in Chocobos.
I think Althea is interesting as well, because it's like I think that should be on the radar to be banned. I don't think it should be banned alongside everything. I think because it's too new a card, we don't know how. Like I think a lot of people are on the we should ban it, and there's a lot of people on the it's kind of fine. I think with some time and with some data, we can see how toxic a card it really can be. It's like Mione and well, yeah, it's obviously it's protection and a combo extender, which Wind maybe doesn't need since it's got so much going for it already. Like with Bismarck and Chocobo give it enough bounds realistically, but it's I think that's going into a whole different topic, I guess. But Althea and Mione, very similar cards, but I agree that Mione should be banned before Althea is at the very least.
Yeah, definitely.
Althea's like slower as well. Like you can do the turn, and then you are protecting yourself, but you like although you don't actually lose a backup, you are losing it for your turn. Whereas Mune allows for you, like as you said with Varn, like you put your 2 backups down, you just enable crazy turns, whereas Althea doesn't really allow that yet. So in the future, it will do.
Assuming you have plays to make, you can play around Althea, whereas you can't really play around Mione without Istoloing a break, like cancelling the auto ability, you know, because Althea costs 3 CP to use its effect, because it obviously activates a backup usually, so it costs 2, but then you have to dull it to use its effect. You have to leave CP up. So yeah.
Because it said you see Althea on the board, whereas Mune have to guess what's in their hand, and they can draw that. So you'd have to hold the removal for a card that could potentially turn up, whereas Althea is going to be there the whole time.
I think the caveat of the ban as well is like Wind has inherently evolved from a more sort of like control deck to it's become a lot faster.
It's very combo heavy, yeah.
It's a very fast card in comparison to Althea. Whereas say Mione versus Althea in YRP format, Althea should be banned. But for this format, Mione's a lot more inherently toxic with the speed of wind.
Well, it's interesting as well, because Mione was like one of the best cards in YRP in the past as well, and I think it would still be rated above Althea there, because it was the card that helped. Like, if you drew Brother and Mione, you were guaranteed 4 backups, 2 of which were the backups necessary to set up like your game plan. Whereas Althea doesn't do that, because you have to spend 5 CP rather than paying 0 CP, you know? I think Althea, the reason people want Althea ban in particular is because of the Leviathan Althea and the Bismarck Althea interactions, really. And I think if maybe they were able to errata Bismarck and Althea so that so a bit Bismarck and Leviathan so they don't see the bounce, maybe a bit better, a bit more balanced in people's eyes at the very least. But you know, I don't really know if they'd ever do that, or if they even see Althea as a big issue, because they've not put it in the list of cards they're keeping an eye on, which I figured Tom would probably highlight now.
Getting onto,
yes.
Well, actually, before we got to that part, I was going to mention Sophie limitation or restriction, which is obviously a new. It's not a ban, but a new type of restriction they've introduced, where you could only have 1 copy of Sophie in a deck. They cited that they felt Sophie was too much of a finisher, and that's not how it was intended. I think generally they just realised the card is like way stronger than any other card they've made in the game, so just restrict it down. I think it's that's good rather than banning it.
I think so too. I think the biggest issue with Sophie was that if I killed my opponent's Sophie, my opponent gained value, because they paid 0 to 2 CP, or maximum 2 CP, or they might have paid like 0 or -2 or -4, whatever, for how many cards they drawn and how much damage they dealt with it. So I killed one, I actually lost value because I spent so much CP killing it that my opponent just draws into another one, and that's not very fair, you know? I tried so hard to kill this thing and they got another one.
Like, and it's quite easy to get it back as well.
Yeah,
so they can either just play more from hand or just get another one back. There's a similar problem I had with the Chicory decks, which thankfully died off like almost instantly when the new opus came out. It was the same thing. It was very not value heavy for them to spam into the Chicories. You work really hard to get rid of them, and then they just replay them the next turn, and you're back to square one and you're dead. So a similar sort of thing with Sophie.
I think if they didn't ban Mione, actually, I think that deck would maybe come back in some form as like the next, just I want to say this term, like the next thoughtless aggro deck, you know.
I think it's still there. I think people just forgot about it because they got interested by new cards.
New shiny and also better shiny, you know.
Yeah.
But the deck I think that deck above most other decks took the hardest hit for the Mione ban.
Yeah, definitely. And then, as you mentioned, Michael, there's a couple which they've said we're keeping our eye on, which again was good to hear, because I think that was one of the frustrations of the year from a lot of players, was the communication levels hadn't been great from Square Enix. Obviously, not much is going on. You know, it's not their fault. COVID is not their fault. Not being able to do tournament stuff, again, it's not their fault. But I think people felt the communication level was quite low, and that was disappointing. And so to now come out with this lengthy ban list, which was quite quick as well, from people sort of moaning about the cards, to banning them, it's fairly quick this time. But yeah, they've also now said they're keeping an eye on 3 cards. One is Fat Chocobo, just the 4-drop version, and probably just because that Chocobo deck was doing quite well, a bit ridiculous. Not sure this is a big problem card, to be honest, but
So on Fat Chocobo, I think Steve, and I know you said you couldn't get Steve on before this started or earlier on, Steve made a really good comment, and I agree with it. And they can't print a good Chocobo. They can't print a Chocobo of text really, while Fat Chocobo exists. Just because, like, if there's any reason to run Chocobos, it can just become this massively toxic draw 5 off of one card. And I know it got a massive downgrade with Stern and Mione, but that's probably why they didn't ban it and they're just keeping an eye on it, just because like it does limit design space to a degree that's worth investigating.
I think it was more Stern was the problem with the Chocobo deck. So
yeah, absolutely. I think so too. I think it was one of the best decks in the game last set because of the combination of Mione, Bismarck, and Stern all being parts of the deck. But still, even without Stern, I still think it's maybe a very, very good deck and needs to be investigated. It's just so thoughtless and powerful that it still warrants some and consistent, which is scary for an aggro deck. Which is kind of why Sildra is also having a look at it. So spoilers.
Well, you're very good
Sildra's
at
also.
If you want to host, you can host next time. But yeah, Sildra is also on the list. I was just going to say with the Chocobos, as long as fire is good in the meta, which at the moment fire is quite good, I think Chocobos have a problem because of the lowish spawn things and stuff. So yeah,
absolutely.
That's why I don't think it's a big deal with Chocobos. Yeah, Sildra was also on there.
I get it, and I get it. Why? It's because it adds. I think me and Andy actually had this conversation of Sarah from the YYT a couple of days ago, and it's the reason Sildra's on the watch list is probably because of its ability to give consistency to aggro, and like aggro as a playstyle is a gambit. You're hoping you get good draws and your opponent gets bad draws, and you win based on that fact alone, or you whether you get good draws, like your deck can take advantage of. Oh, my opponent didn't draw the removal they needed, the Shantoto they needed, the floodgates they needed in particular. Or I drew the specific combination of cards, like I drew my Barts and my Boko, my Dogga and my Sophie. Sildra is an interesting card because it searches those out. So I pay one card in hand, essentially, to guarantee myself that I've got the aggro thing that will win me this game in 4 turns. And the issue with aggro in the past, and the reason we all hated it so much in the past past sets was because of how consistent it was with Stern, Mashery, and stuff,
Yeah, the only thing... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, for Sildra as well, it has to be worth the minus, like,
one
looking
card
at
in hand,
you're theoretically playing with 5 cards in hand, but with aggro, damage is a resource. So it gets to the point where they are, like, to view damage as a resource, as soon as you put someone on 6 damage, they need to block. So like every attack you can get in from that point is +1 resource to you. So Sildra pays back playing with a 5-card hand to make your opponent play badly, essentially. Michael will explain it better, but
no, that was really well put. I would just say that it's really interesting that because I can't remember. I think it was Christopher Matisky said that the game's moved from a CP-based meta to a goal-based meta. You want to set up the board that'll win you the game for whatever card, however much it costs, rather than the sort of slow resource game that we're all kind of used to in Final Fantasy. So a card like Sildra kind of leans into that I'll basically play with 1 card less in hand at turn 1 just because it guarantees that I'll win the game. Kind of thing, I'll achieve those goals. I'll set up the Barts and the Boko. I'll set up the Dogga and the Sophie.
Also, the caveat of Rydia has a potential to become really toxic. It's just a shame she was printed during the same set as Wonder Twins.
Rydia's very, very, very good, and
I like Rydia.
Rydia's really fun. And I think we can get onto that in the new cards if we ever talk about them. That during this, I guess you've had your legend review anyway. Rydia's a very, very interesting fun card, but yeah, I think you're right. It might push Sildra slightly over the edge.
Yeah, the only thing I thought maybe with Sildra, it's a future-proofy thing because all of the crystal generators are category 5, or those 2 top backups. So maybe there's something in that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
yes, they are.
A lot of crystal-based decks are actually weirdly aggro for this current meta, like Ice Water in particular. I don't know if you've seen many Ice Water decks going about, but they're running Terra and Mog and such. And Mog 6 is a very, very powerful card that can set you up very quickly. So having such easy access to crystal generation and elements for that card is very, very scary. So I think so. Yeah, it is the best way to search crystals at this moment.
Yeah,
That's another caveat to add on to the Sildra factor. With cards like Mog, you can afford to play with 5-card hand as well.
Yeah. The context in the most recent set makes sense for why Sildra's on the watch list.
Yeah,
And then,
when you think about it, like Ridio makes it if you play Ridio first turn and then a 4 backup, like say Cecil, you can literally just ditch your Sildra to search 2 cards that you want. Usually you'd get draw 2 and that's what you got, but this is search whatever you want, basically.
You can do it at the end of your opponent's turn to make it so that you have basically a 6-card hand. You know, you just cast Sildra off. You have 5 cards in hand, one of which is Sildra, and you've got Ridio 4 counters. You've got a 6-card hand then in there, but no matter what happens there.
Yeah, Mike in the chat actually saying Ridio's going to make things a mess. Yeah, pushes Mind Flayer over the edge. That's just really, Ridio is very strong. In fairness, every deck I've built so far for this set has been around Ridio, so I do like it. So I'd rather they ban Sildra than ban Ridio, so that's fine with me.
Yeah,
and then
I'd say so too. Yeah, ban a hero, not a legend.
And the last one on the watch list is Mashery, which we can get on to a bit more because we're going to review the Cymru Cup, and there's quite a lot of Mashery in there. So yeah, similar to sort of the Stern, wasn't it? You played Stern or Mashery, and it's this sort of impossible to get rid of if you just keep bouncing or draw cards, etc.
It's an inevitability card, and the aggro as a deck also has access to. Less so now after the recent bans, but if the game goes on long enough, when I draw my Mashery, I am near guaranteed to win. Like it has the same issue with Stern, whereas when I play this card, my opponent has to think more than I do, and that's okay because Mashery was more limited in the design space for deck building than Stern was. Because Stern you could just put in any deck, like Sky Pirates are running it, and it kind of is the antithesis of what Sky Pirates really wants to do. Like for so long, but you know, Mashery, I wouldn't consider it worth banning, other than we've seen our first reasonable sized tournament result all year, and there were so many Mashery there.
Yeah,
and that is a worry.
And the only thing with this as well is that if they make the light and dark cards are starting to get a bit more interesting. There's some like spicy flavour ones, new effects, and this just sort of cock blocks it because when Stern and Mashery are too good, you can't play the other ones because you have to play one of these ones. Like Noctis, for example, just come out, really cool card, interesting, lots of different effects, but you won't play it because you need to play the Mashery, so it just sort of limits you a bit.
Yeah, Pyro, Amaterasu, and Mashery were all played in over 50% of the decks that top cut this event.
Yeah,
and they were in Pyro and Mashery were in the deck that won. I believe was Pyro in it. Pyro wasn't. Sorry, Mashery was in the deck that won. I don't know what it is. and the deck that came second.
I mean, without getting ahead of ourselves, I've just looked, and in 5 of the top 8 decks, Mashery is played in 5 of them. But but weirdly, they are in every single one. You only play one They've only played one Mashery.
That makes sense. You should only play one Mashery, I would say. If you play 2, it's just because I've seen a lot of people play 2, and I don't think they should do, because there's too many ways to search it, and pretty much every element that's worth playing Mashery in.
Yeah, Mike again in the chat. Yeah. Speaking of Ridio, she may push Mashery back to a ban. Even if he doesn't like Ridio, Mike. Chill out on Ridio. Christmas, Mike. She's good. She's good fun cards.
Oh, you're hitting his favourite card.
Play nicely with Ridio. It's good. Yeah, so I mean, we should probably let's flip over to the Cymru Cup, as we're sort of delving into that. Cymru. So as we are a UK-based podcast, we'll focus on the UK meta as it was. It's got a bit of Europe as well. I think some of the European guys came over. So this was the big cup that was sort of fan-hosted, or community-hosted is probably a better word. Usually there's the Winter Cup, which kind of forms one of Square Enix. It's a bit like a non-official Crystal Cup. Square Enix would normally run it. It's usually always hosted in Wales. I think it is, isn't it? Firestorm Games.
Yeah.
Do you have one in Scotland?
The January we had Summer Cup, but which never happened because of COVID. But January, the December Winter Cup was always in Wales, but there was always sometimes a second one in Milan, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was kind of like a end of year sort of fun tournament, big prizes. Obviously, it couldn't happen this year, but the community at Firestorm Games got together and set it up themselves. And they did get some prize support actually from Square Enix, which was nice to see. And what was good about 54 players in a big tournament. I've put the deck list up on the screen, and you guys probably will need to look at yourself. They obviously played the ban list. I don't know if the bans are officially live yet, but they did set that as a rule for the tournament. Obviously, it was a Swiss, A1 Swiss, one best of one, and then they moved into a top 16 Cup for day 2, which was best of 3, and then top 8, top 4. And we've got YYT on here. You two didn't go, but obviously your boys fared quite well. Steve Dolman of the YYT took the win, and James, popular figure in the community, James Duff, coming in 3rd place. He was on stream like all day. It always seemed to be his match.
Really? I think that the whoever, I can't remember specifically, whoever was it was Briddles, right? Briddles was streaming it. Really, he really likes FF7, I think. So just wanted to comment
he was
over it all.
Gotcha.
he was big in the Avalanche Operatives deck, yeah.
But yeah, this was the sort of the first big tournament post ban, and it was kind of interesting to see what happened. But as you can see from the deck list, the most interesting thing, there's only 2 decks that are similar, I think. There's 2 knights. No, that's not. There's 1 knight, 2 samurais,
and
2 knights, and that's it. That's the only crossover in the top 16, which is mad for a FFTCG meta, because normally it's, once you get to sort of top cuts, it's all fairly similar. So yeah, what did we think of the decks on show? Do you think it was a first steps, or do you think this is a sign of things to come at the moment, with the sort of meta being a bit wide open?
I think it's really interesting because this is simultaneously the first. I think this is one of the biggest. It's at the very least one of the biggest tournaments during lockdown, and it's the first tournament of the new meta that's this big. I think actually there was an Italian nationals as well that was really big.
There was a Xanathan Cup as well in America. I think that was an online cup, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But speaking specifically about the UK meta, this is the first, as like you said earlier, this is the biggest event in the UK, and it's the first event in the UK since for start of the Opus, and since the bans. And the bans aren't in effect till the 28th, I can't remember, or 24th or something, but they did put them in place. So yeah, I think that the plurality of the decks seeing play, how different they are, can at least be a little attributed towards that. Or it could be because of a healthy meta. I don't know. That's all I can really say. I don't really know. If we see this many decks, and the next tournament has this many different decks in Top Cut, and the next tournament, in the first 200 or first 100-man tournament has the exact same effect, I'll be extremely happy with Final Fantasy TCG, because it means that reasonably you can play any play style, which is a first for the last 3 Opera, I'd say, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure that will happen.
I was going to say, I think it's a combination of both, because this is literally not even in a ban list, so we can't see like any sort of, official innovative lists. So it's almost just like a new set's just released, it's like dropped right before say a nationals, or say like a big premier event like this. If the next event is more saturated, then yes.
If people start spamming Mill as a deck list, which was a Christopher Matiski deck, I believe. I don't know who he collaborated with to make it, or if anyone.
Probably with Steve.
Yeah, but probably with Steve. I know they're friends and as well, so that would make sense. And this deck is very, very good. And I built it in real life myself and played it some, and it can lose, but it feels quite toxic, I'd say. I mean, the original deck list name is Earth Water Toxic, so Steve has put it as the Cymru jar, the Cymru jar, because we're PG in this, of course. I think maybe the next tournament, people are going to start playing this deck a lot more. I think Waterfire won the Italian tournament I was talking about, and it was a different deck from this, but this deck's running a lot of things that say, well, it's running that to the 3-drop Water Celeste, which is a bit different from like the other Waterfire decks you've seen, but like Waterfire seems to be very strong. People are running that, the Twins combination, and we'll probably someone in the next couple of weeks will probably settle on a strong lit version of that list. But
yeah, I think there's going to be strong versions of these, which will then sort of take up. I think what was refreshing for this is they had a free hit. Obviously, there was no established meta. No one knew what was going to be good. Yeah. But it feels like you could take a lot of things and do well, whereas in the past you could do okay, but you knew you were never going to compete with the two sort of top riding decks, for example. Whereas it does feel much more open. So I think we will see stuff sort of starting to, like, I don't know, the opposite for diversifiers, but the sort of single in on it.
Centralize.
Centralize, yeah, that's good. Yeah. So yeah, it's.
What's interesting is there's not many Sky Pirates there.
That did surprise me as well, actually. A lack of Sky Pirates. Well, certainly in the top cut, is that Lewis?
There's one. Lewis Marshall played it, and he told me he was DMing. He was told me he was going to be playing a Chocobos, even if they banned Stern. So you've lied to me. You've lied to me. Yeah, and it's really interesting because I wonder if that says that Sky Pirates isn't as good as maybe we would all think. Because at least for my original initial deck building and a lot of my friends' initial deck building. Sky Pirates was the standard to meet or beat as a deck, for the first few weeks at Opera, in the first few, after the ban. Is this deck better than Sky Pirates? No, but does it have good matchups to make it good at least? No, then move on, Yeah,
well, I mean, Mitch, you just we did like a little local tournament at the end of the year, and you won with Sky Pirates. It's only 8 players or 10 players, I think, but how did you think it went? Are you surprised it wasn't more represented here?
No, I remember telling you at the end of it, the whole time I felt like I was just going to lose at a random point because the deck is so weak to board clears that it could just you have Balthier and Pinello to stop Titans but you can't stop Santotto. You're going to struggle to stop Filia. You're going to struggle to pretty much any board clear.
That's actually interesting because you can go over the top of them quite easily in the deck. I've found with Ishtola and Kites and Balthier itself. If someone Filias or Suzanos, your forwards are probably going to die, but you can at least dull your backups and dull your forwards to save 2 of them. And 8 CP to kill 2 forwards is not great value for the fire player, and a fire deck in general is actually quite weak to win. I've generally found.
Actually, as a fire player, I've got the solution to this. Basically, with the print of Brynhildr, it becomes a lot harder to set up Kites Van efficiently. Brynhildr being able to save kites, you can't just leave a kites out. You need to play it very, very conservatively.
I suppose, wouldn't you generally? Yeah, that makes sense actually. Okay, fair enough.
Plus, you need to play sort of suboptimally when you lose Amaterasu.
Amaterasu is the best way to beat Sky Pirate. It's just hands down. You Amaterasu the first van, you're probably guaranteed the win generally. So that makes sense. Yeah, the Fire's one of the only formats that has access to Sky Pirates. Maybe that's why it didn't do so well. The over-reliance on Amaterasu, which, as we said earlier, was played in 9 decks. Amaterasu was the most played card in this tournament. It had 27 copies, meaning it was a 3 of in all 9 decks it was still played in. So,
I mean, if you're playing 5, you have to play 3 Amaterasu, really. It's just too good.
Yeah, fair enough. It's so good against the decks that would beat you otherwise, because wind generally does well against fire. But the 3 strongest elements being wind, fire, and earth, we'll say right now, or water to access a support element. Wind beats earth, wind beats fire, beats earth, beats wind, just because of the aggro nature of wind in recent.
It could be the Rampere effect as well, because remember, Amaterasu pretty much killed off Rampel.
That and the low speeds. That and the fact that aggro decks got so much faster in playing 2 forwards and turn 3 or 2,
With Palamporum, you just go, they go Van, you go Amaterasu, they try to... No, wait, you can't do that because Kites tributes himself before you can pour him. You can just pour them anyway. Then if they try to play a Vanya Amaterasu and they can't kites, there's lots of like wee interactions, you know.
Yeah,
Make it a
Palom
lot
Porum
harder.
are nuts. I think we rated Porum highly in the Legend review. Well, Mitch, you did, and then you convinced us all with your passionate convincing. But we didn't rate Palom as much, but together they are surprisingly really, really strong. And they're a big problem.
It's interesting because Porom being better than Palom is represented in the list because there's 12 Poroms and there's 6 Paloms.
Well, Porum's going to be one of those cards that is like in the same sort of pantheon as like Amaterasu, Iroh, you know, like those sort. I can't name them off the top of my head, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It's
like
not going to be good. It's a free coup call in every turn.
a generalized card you just put in your deck to bolster whatever else you're playing. Like Genesis used to be nice.
Yeah, Porum.
Yeah,
Palom Porum or just Porum absolutely shits on ice. Because
Porum's good regardless. Palom needs Porum.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking, actually, essentially, the Sky Pirates deck doesn't run Porum, and I think that's his issue. I think the Sky Pirates should be running Lena and Porum and not 3 Elza. Maybe 1 Elza, because I do like having another, like as like a 5th or 6th card to choose to search with Van, because that makes your Van just better overall. But it needs to be running the consistency and power cards that make the deck good, like 3 Bismarck, which I see the one deck that didn't top cut here. The one Sky Pirates deck that did top cut here didn't run Bismarck. 3 Bismarck, only ran 2. I think it's probably a mistake. But yeah, like Lena and Porum will probably elevate it in power, and I don't know if that makes it survive against fire. It probably doesn't because Amaterasu and, as Mitch said earlier, board wipes, and it's very easy to play around the other ways to stop board wipes. So maybe it needs to run Stola, Lena, and Porum or something to try and circumvent.
He was running Stola, but yeah, Mike in the chat is saying the same sort of thing. It's a tough reload for Sky Pirates, so you hold back on the aggro because you know you're going to get cleared out. Which probably, I mean, this is the top cut we're looking at. There's 52 players. From what I saw on the stream, there were more Sky Pirates because I definitely saw more than just Lewis playing them.
One other player, and I imagine it'd be 2, or if it is 2 other people, then 2 we saw.
So I would suspect it's a board wipe issue.
And
not just other people, but from what I saw from some of the games, there was quite a lot of misplays this tournament. It seemed more than normal. I don't know if that's just me being unfair. We're putting it down to rustiness because obviously no one's really played, new cards, not been in tournament stuff. There was a lot of misplays going on, and particularly on the stream, they had to keep running in and calling the judge to go and reset the board and stuff. Seemed to happen a lot.
I agree with that entirely. I think there was so much. I not so much just like even just this tournaments in general I've been watching, or partaking in, or whatever. Just and people I've seen in general, the level of play has gone down because of lockdown, because people aren't playing so much, and
just being face to face as well. It's different.
Yeah, it's more of a social, like a social thing is so much bigger, and also the last opus really hurt some. Like I know in the YYT there's some really really good players who kind of got worse over the last opus because they just would play Stern or Mastery or whatever, and they wouldn't have to think as much as they would normally in Final Fantasy TCG. You know, like they're excellent players who have got slightly worse just because they've been over reliant on cards to say, I don't need to think so much right now because I'm probably guaranteed to win just by playing it. So it's like some combination of the thousands of factors that have just made people maybe play a bit worse lately, which is fair enough, you know.
Yeah.
It's easy to just sit on a computer and like click on buttons, and you can even write down your game plan in front of you. But
fight an Octagon, I will tell you right now, I'm so bad on Octagon, and I think there's so many other people would agree. You know, it's hard to keep track of everything. It's so slow to do things. You just don't do the thing you normally wouldn't. Like even things like keeping track of how many cards are in your opponent's deck. I know that's become more of a thing because Mel's back, but like that's a thing that you need to remind yourself to do. So you should go and count how many cards your opponent's deck and how many cards in your deck and stuff throughout the game if the game goes long enough. But on Octagon, it's done for you, so you don't have to make that mental effort. And if that goes on for a year and a half, like as Tom said, you're just gonna get a bit rusty. So I don't think you're unfair in saying that at all, Tom. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, but not a knock on everyone. It's just an observation. But yeah,
absolutely.
Are there any of these decks you want to have a quick look at? Is any of them that were particularly excited you, or
well, I'm
didn't
getting
excite you?
roasted. I've been roasted in the
Nick Mulway's a flake. Yeah, that was just a classic Storm deck, wasn't it? The lock.
It was. There was 2 Storm decks, interestingly, but they were very, very different. Liam Jones's Primal's Best Girls deck and Tush Sendav's Mick Mul's a Flake.
I saw Tush on stream. He lost because his lock went into damage, and then his second, he only ran 2 lock, and one went break zone quite early. Then his second one went in damage, and it was kind of like game over for him, which was a shame. But
yeah, I did. We barely caught any of the thing at all. We were actually playing games in real life as well, because Saturday is one of our locals. We have 2 locals, and one's on Saturday, and we had 7 people there just playing as me, we Andy.
Yeah, I normally wouldn't like. I was rocked up in bed with like norovirus. So I just sat in bed all day watching the stream. So, thank you, Broodles, keeping me vaguely occupied. I did fall asleep for something that wasn't on you though. Not fit down to the illness. But
Broodles is Brad Seegers, right?
That's Brad. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, Brad Seegers. I love you, Brad Seegers.
But it was a very good stream actually. It was very well set up. Like the quality was very good, and like they had like a room cam, which was really cool. I think I saw that. Yeah, Haunted Hotel might be talking about that. I think they had it as well, where they actually had a camera on the room. So during the stream, you could like switch that and see what it actually looked like, which I think is quite cool. Sometimes they miss out on that.
That's definitely good. Yeah. It's better than a Be Back Soon screen that Square Enix usually has.
Yeah. So it's cool. But let's have a look at these decks. Which ones stuck out?
So interesting. There was a Lightning deck that came in top 8. And
I think it was Kingsglaive, wasn't it?
It was Kingsglaive.
Ramu and the boys.
And they're running low value cards that just do well. There's a one of Nyx, and then everything else is like Behemoth K and Ramu and stuff, you know. And it's interesting because it's like I would consider them very, very slow cards. I'm not saying bad, I'm just saying slow. So it's interesting to see such like a slow deck do so well. And what I mean slow is like it's slow and clunky. Like to play a Ramu, you need to wait for the right cards in hand to then kill the whole board or some forwards or one forward. Actually, they're only running they're running Ramu, Andromeda the Wrath, and Raiden Revenant Wings. You have to wait for the right cards in hand and hope your opponent doesn't have something to deal with it the turn it comes out, and you know, at all costs, maybe 7 or 6 or 7 CP each. So it's really interesting to see that deck do so well, and I'm kind of glad for it. That deck looks really fun, and is the only predominant Lightning deck. Oh, it's the only Lightning deck in general.
Yeah. I mean, Mitch, you were playing around a bit with Kingsglaives at the start of the set. You're not massively convinced on it. I feel like it might be a bit of a sleeper deck that will, over time, as people tweak it, and if it does well at other tournaments, people will sort of jump onto it, I think.
It's one of those decks that's going to have the inherent issue of you can only run certain cards. Like, you can only run Kingsglaives. It's the same with Sky Pirates, I find. You can only run Sky Pirates, which is what I was going to bring up earlier with the adding Porum in. Yeah, you can add Porum into Sky Pirates, but then you're taking away from the Sky Pirates. So then that makes Balthier a little bit worse. That makes Pinello a little bit worse. It's the same with Kingsglaives. The more you dilute the deck, the worse it's going to become as a Kingsglaive deck. So that makes Regis worse. That makes Nyx worse.
My discussion of the inclusion of Porum meant taking away Cuculanes or Porum, so you still have as many Sky Pirates. Yeah, because Sky Pirate, you need to be running minimum, like, I can't remember the number off my top, but you have a minimum number of Sky Pirates you can run before the deck's absolutely trashed here. So, yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with that. Kingsglaive, that is an actual issue, because they don't have cards they can choose between. You know, and there's only a couple of good Kingsglaives. There's Nyx and there's Axis, and everything else is like, damn, this is a slow lightning card, isn't it? Let's go.
See, when you look at it, there's a lot of really cool interactions. Like, C3 cost Nyx into Arden. That makes something unable to block, so that's an easy lethal turn to calculate.
Yeah. What's really interesting, and I think above all else in this deck, is the thing in this tournament is the things that are missing, and that's ice cards. There are 4 ice cards, and 4 of them are dual color. There's 2 ice Deletas, the ice Earth Deletas, and there's 2 ice wind locks. there's no ice cards, despite the inclusion, the printing of Go-Go, which I think was in everyone I know's deck list, like a deck building inclusions for a time periods. Like I think maybe 20% to 30% of the decks I've built have included Go-Go, but I've not brought one to a tournament or brought one to locals because I've not found something that makes it so strong yet.
That's the thing, is time. Like, give it time, people will work out something that works with Go-Go and makes it strong. But this is like, what was it, 2 weeks after the ban they announced this was? Or was it
It's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same as Water Ice Terra. Water Ice Terra is really strong, but don't think it's a deck you could learn to like a premium event level in that sort of time. Maybe you could. It's like so many. It's just so.
I think that what's interesting. I think that because it itself is an aggro deck, and aggro had such a nerf. Like, why would you run it over Mill? Which I think, which Steve was considering several decks, including his own Mill list, which had fire cards in it rather than just water earth. But why would you run it over this Mill? And that's maybe a prediction for the meta ahead is the next couple weeks in the meta, or after Christmas and after the holiday season and stuff, are we going to be focusing on beating this Mill deck that's won a tournament and people are writing articles about it like preemptively being an issue? Because Ice Water, I don't see doing very, very well against it if both decks are played to their full extent.
The problem with Ice...
Oh, sorry, go on. On you go.
No. Yeah, so the problem I find with Ice is that why would you done and freeze something when you can just remove it from the board?
Yeah, fair.
Right.
And discard's too expensive now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. You can freeze your opponent's backups. That's nice. That forces them to use their hand and sort of forces them into an aggro style deck, even if their deck isn't comfortable with it. But most decks can just go aggressive now, and then they also have the removal while you're just leaving their forwards there. And if you don't draw the Dull and Freeze, you're dead, basically.
Yeah, and also with a lot of horror around. Also, go ahead, Andy.
But yeah, I was going to say, if Mill becomes a thing, Ice could become like really good because you can easily set up for like Lancer unit with Go-Go's inherently good. You just go flan, Lancer unit, like that's 4 discards, that's 6 cards at your hand if you've got Go-Go. A Go-Go, crack flan Go-Go.
But I think
the other discard and another card.
I'd say generally Go-Go is really weak to something like Mill because they just have so many ways to go, oh yeah, I'll pay 2 CP for you to bin this 3 CP card that hasn't resolved its value yet.
You're not paying it as like an extra discard card because you play it and then you set it up, then you can drop the Go-Go, then you get the free discard. If you put Mill to 0 cards in hand, they top deck, and when they start top decking, you start winning. Well, if you control the hand, you control the game.
Well, I'd say Mill is fine top decking because all its cards are removal, so it just removes you, and Ice has opted into a slow game style that Mill really takes advantage of, and it's why like Dadaluma Riku Mill was so good against Ice in the past, despite it generally being Wind is really weak to Ice. I think the issue with Go-Go is that Ice cards aren't great. And I think that they printed some premium cards right now, like Terra and like Go-Go, for example. They're both excellent cards, and Celeste is maybe the best Ice card. I mean, one of the best cards printed this set. But it's not enough to circumvent the several opera of no like non-strong Ice cards. You know, it's like it's all well and good. You've got these broken cards, but you have to run suboptimal things. Like if I want to run mono Ice Terra, for example, I need to run the Shiva package, and you know that depresses me beyond belief.
We're seeing stuff like Mill, like if it becomes a Mill-based format, then like that's a combo deck. It gets preyed on. Would you pay an Atomos for an Argath? That's like Argath. You basically say discard cards.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think in Mill probably because you would you probably be you have to imagine you have to imagine in the context of Andy, you have to imagine in the context of this is my I have 6 to I have about 6 to 7 to 8 Atomos in a game. I don't really mind because I can cast an Atomos and then cast a Fam for it because that's what my deck's built to do. I'm not losing value because that's the goal of the deck. I think we're getting a bit too specifics of a deck that we don't really know all that well. I've known about this mill deck for about 2 weeks, or so a week and a half, sorry, and I don't know exactly how it's played. You're probably best asking Steve about that above anything else. But I don't think it's really interesting that Ice hasn't topped this tournament.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with
Melbourne.
Ice is, like you said, it's quite slow. Most of their good effects are on attack or it doing something after it did, where all these other decks, everything that enters the field either kills something or gets you card advantage, and Ice doesn't really do that at the moment. So you're then relying on it to survive a turn to do something. And with stuff like Porum and Amaterasu and stuff around, even if you get something that does something on enter, doesn't really matter because it's killed, and then Porum just turns it off, so it struggles a bit.
And it's interesting because we've both you both said, and I think we can also even put Fire's represented really well in the meta from us, and Fire is historically and still to this day really hates on Ice. It's very easy because their forwards are so expensive and so slow to play that if you remove them, Ice is kind of buggered really. Yeah,
Mike in the chat's called out Sean's Wall deck. He said he's glad to see it in there. I'm not sure for that, but let's have a look at that one quickly. This is like a Neo X Deathy sort of thing. So yeah, the Wall, which obviously plays a free Mobius, so you can just get all these sort of toxic cards in like BFA, Yasmat, Neo X Death.
As well, can you be played off that?
Took us to Reunion as well.
Yeah, it's a strong deck. It's just that I think it might have gone further if it. I think it could have gone further, but I also think it's sort of limited to maybe B tier, A tier in terms of playability. Neo X Death as a card is very hit or miss, and you kind of have to play it for this deck list. I think especially if you don't play it into Minfilia, as we saw on stream for the against James. You know, your opponent plays Minfilia and you play Neo X Death. If you don't, you kind of have to dunk your hand because you're kind of I want to say streamlined into that play by the deck itself. Then yeah, it's a very streamlined deck. Your plays are obvious from.
It's an all-in, isn't it? It's an all-in deck. You go all in. Can you deal with it? Clearly, to get in a best of one Swiss, a lot of people couldn't deal with it. Probably weren't expecting Neo X Deaths and stuff. I think from what I saw on the street when Sean was on it, he was sort of mulliganing to get the Wall X Death early. And then a lot of Mist Dragons and stuff like that to cancel the stuff to kill the X Deaths. So it's kind of that, like, can you deal with this? No, you can't. Okay, I'll have the win. Thanks very much. But he's still got up to the top 4, so
yeah. I think Neo X Death is in a better spot than it was maybe like last set because Stern's gone, so there's a reason to run a dark card other than it, and that Finn we're seeing less and less played because both the Sophie restriction and the Stern ban.
It could be his case. It looks like he's been playing a deck for like so long. He's got like 2 months of testing in 2 weeks.
The bill, Wendy's right there. A player who's played a deck so long will play it to a better degree than let's say a world class player will play a deck maybe slightly worse than like a Euros class or a American Nats class player who's been playing the same deck for 2 months, 3 months longer. And yeah, this is a pet deck I know for Sean. So the fact it came so far probably speaks more to his knowledge of it. I think the latter half of the games we saw, he was misplaying a lot because of like different reasons. The game was going on for so long, and the difference between third and fourth matters so little than the difference between fourth and first. Yeah, that's the only game I caught really of that stream, so that's all I can speak for.
The one game you saw. Yeah, Mitch, you were saying as well, perhaps now people will start thinking, I need to. When XDeath first came out, it's like you have to have a counter for XDeath in every deck, otherwise you straight up lose. So maybe people will have to sort of start taking this in again, and in which case this deck will just drop off again because once you deal with that, you're fairly there, aren't you?
Yeah. It's interesting because people aren't willing to play Neo XDeath because they're very aware of how boring and kind of skillless a card it is. I'd say, like it's. Yeah,
I mean, you've got to have some baubles to take this to the Fun Cup.
Yeah,
the one tournament in the year where everyone gets to finally play. To turn up with this, you've got to be sort of fairly obnoxious and not too worry about how you're going to be perceived slapping down a wall at X-Death turn 1.
I guess if I'm playing locals, I'm not ever gonna play Neo X-Death because for locals for me anyways, I'm more of a social event. I'm not gonna show up and play Final Fantasy TCG just to not play Final Fantasy TCG,
Yes, Mike in chat disagrees. He was surprised that not surprised that it got to top cut, but it made it to fourth, because it's quite. Once you get into best of 3, and it's fairly, your strategy is fairly laid out, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from now on, just with the printing of NeoX, until the game speeds up so much, it no longer matters as a card. Like, you play 4 characters turn 2, whatever, or turn 1, sorry. Just expect to see one in top 16 every tournament from now on, just because someone will win top cut. Someone will top cut with it because it's best of 1 format, and someone will play it. It's not a very well represented card, I'd say, but it will just see play every now and then. Because people won't have built against it and won't practice against it because it's such an undercurrent card that people aren't willing to play because of the boredom factor of it.
Yeah, but yeah, well done to everyone at the Cymru Cup. Also, Mitch, you have the final word on the.
No, I was just looking at the deck, and I just feel like it could, I can see it leaning more into fire, and I feel like it would have been better more leaning into wind. Like if you had the Yustola to protect the Neo X Death, if you had it to protect the Braska, all of these cards that are big value, your deck dies to a Shantotto basically.
It's really interesting. So they're not running cards like Titan, the 2-drop that protects Neo Exith, which you've seen more like the Turbo Earth Water Neo Exith from previous sets.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to he's got top 4. It's clearly a good deck, but I was just thinking you could run the Shantotto from the last set, the 5-cost one that gets you an Earth and a Wind card, and then that will speed up your deck. That means you can get your Yasmats earlier. You can get say. I don't know.
Walls easier as well, yeah.
Yeah, walls easier. Yustolas to protect your cards. I just feel like I'm just not. I know he's got the Mist Dragon, which I presume is what the Terror is for, but Yustola does the same thing. So I think that deck has potential to develop as well. So I think that could be more of an interesting one to test out.
Yeah. I do like that wall. I'm a big fan of the wall into the BFA play.
Good aggro start.
Yeah. Not as an aggro start, just at any point if you've got the BFA.
Oh, it's a mid-range play then. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I was playing summoners recently where you're discarding the BFAs off the 2 summoner for the 10k effect, but then having the option to then play it out if you're in trouble. It's good.
That's really fun, actually.
Such a strong card. Unless you're playing against something like Steve's deck, it's kind of hard to deal with, to be honest with you.
At the moment, it's a massive card at the moment, just because it's hard to deal with the built-in protection and removal. Well, not protection, but it removes when you try and kill it. It's very cool. So it's a tricky
That's
card.
something that really surprised me is that the Samurai lists aren't playing BFA. BFA is really good Samurai, Michael.
For Samurais in particular, yeah, I can't find BFA on the playability things. Is BFA only played in one deck? Am I right in saying that? No, it shouldn't be.
I think James had it in his Avalanche, didn't he?
Oh, he did. So it should be.
He had a one-off. Yeah. Again, it's another sort of get out of hell card.
Yeah,
along with your one Shantotto.
It's an excellent card that some decks really struggle. If you're playing against wind, if you expect to play against wind, you wouldn't play it. If you split against water, you wouldn't play it. But against decks like ice, earth, which are very heavy. Oh, ice isn't, but earth is really heavily represented here. Oh, sorry, it was played in 5 decks and 9 copies of it for the tournament. So
it's your sideboard card in a game where you can't sideboard.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's the best way to describe it. I'd say, and what's really interesting here is the amount of play styles we've got going on here. We've got Will, we've got Mill. In first place, we've got combo / mid-range of fire water summons. Mid-range definitely with fire earth. Aggro mid-range with bad wall. That's his name of the deck. Sorry, Knights, which is mid-range. Samurais, which is mid-range. Ramina Boys, which I don't know how to describe. It's just sort of combo mid-range. A lot of mid-range, which means the game has really, really slowed down, at least for after the bans. So
yeah, I was surprised there was no Alcid sneaking through the Swiss, like an Alcid Lightning.
Some sort of 48 forward deck after the printing Celeste to lock into Chaos or other backup you want to play. Just to play the rest as forwards.
I think it's just because people are so fed up by aggro, but there should have been a couple. Maybe mid-range. Mid-range should theoretically counter aggro, so...
Yeah. Maybe that just means that there were a bunch of aggro decks who just
maybe they shouldn't make it. Yeah,
because, but we don't know all 54 deck lists. We don't know all 54 players, so it's kind of hard to say how. Also, 54 players is the biggest event we've seen in a while, but it's really interesting to talk about meta when there's so few players showing up to events because of the COVID restrictions and because of all the things going on right now. It's like, this is the best we can talk about things, but is this meaning that this is going to be the best thing ever?
There's a lot of big UK names that aren't on this list as well. Some standout names.
Yeah, I'm looking, scanning through it, and I can see a couple. There's Jenny and Push are Euros players. And I can't see any. Jackie Hayden is a Euros player, I believe.
Steve as well, obviously Euros.
Steve hasn't made a Euros.
Has he not made
yet.
Euros? Okay.
No.
He will.
This is his first tournament win, so go Steve. He is. I would say he is of that level of play, though. Absolutely. Yeah. And James as well. And yeah. There are some dotted really, really good players and people you'd normally expect to see in a top cut, but there's a lot of people who just didn't make it you would normally expect, as you kind of said,
But yeah, no, it was a good tournament. Well done, Firestorm Games. Thanks for keeping us amazed. Shame I would like to have gone. Obviously, it was a bit close to Christmas for a few of us to get down there, but we'll see what happens next year. And
Winter Cup Wales is something I look forward to every Christmas, but it is always a hellish date to try and make.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we've been talking just over an hour, and we wanted to finish on an hour, but never mind, we'll keep going. To finish off, we'll do our Christmas game, because it is Christmas. And to celebrate Christmas, we've devised a game which we've called the 12 Cards of Christmas. Let me get my music going. And the way this game is played, it's like the famous song. And you pick a card for each day of Christmas. And we're going to go with the CP cost of the cards for each one. So the first day of Christmas, Michael, are you going to sing for us?
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me one mandatory Sophie.
Okay, so we're going to go for... Well, Sophie's a two...
I remember Sophie. I broke the rules already.
Beforehand.
Sophie is a PCP card, so she technically wouldn't fit for the thing, but really she should be the Sophie in the pear tree, because you're only allowed one of her. Yeah. So she can take number one.
I'll say kites otherwise if we want to keep to the ruling.
We'll go with Sophie. And the second day of Christmas, 2 CP card choice.
Oh God,
what are we going for?
Someone else make a choice for.
Should we go for Rydia just to pick up Mike if he's still listening? We could have the twins.
One Rydia and one Hallam Bottom.
We'll go for Rydia.
Yeah, go for Rydia.
Yeah,
on the third day of Christmas, FFTCG gave to me. What would you like for your free CP choice?
So many good 3 CP forwards or cards in general.
I suppose it could be Typhon, a monster.
Every backup searcher.
No, let's go for the only ice card that anyone's ever excited for, and that's Go-Go.
Go-Go?
Yeah, I support that.
3 Go-Go's go in.
3 Go-Go's, oh yes, it works as well. 3 Go-Go's go going.
How have you Go-Go made the 12 cards of impactful cards of Christmas? Okay, your 4th day of Christmas. It's gonna go. Are we gonna do 12? 4. Maybe we should have Alan Forum because they add up to 4.
I would rather that. Mind Flayer, yeah. It won a tournament. Mind Flayer.
Mind Flayer. Mind Flayer. Congratulations. Oh, it doesn't show me on FFTX. I have to put the space in. Mind Flayer. Well done. I was going to add a fun fact about Mind Flayer. Someone pointed out it absolutely rinses boss deck. So if you play in the boss deck, get your hero teams to have 9 Mind Flayers.
Boss deck was already so beaten by Kukulin and Amaterasu.
I can sense a Mind Flayer getting banned from boss format. Okay.
Yeah.
5th day of Christmas. Your 5 CP choice.
5 golden Tyros.
5 golden Tyro. What card?
Yeah. Honestly, we were going to say Bismarck. But...
We're going to say Bismarck. Oh, we were going to say Bismarck.
I think Tyros is fine.
Tyro makes more sense than the second most played card in this tournament.
Yeah, too niche, I think, Hero Shantato. A good card, though.
Yeah.
Could have had Arden, but he's not very Christmassy.
He was only shown up as a one-of, I think.
Christmassy expert. Alright, the 6th card of Christmas. The 6 CP slot.
Varn,
that's it.
Varn. Can't be any Neo Exeth or Wall Mobius. You know, that's unacceptable.
No.
If it's Neo XF, Christmas is cancelled.
We'll see.
Exactly.
So Varn, anyone have an argument why you shouldn't play 6-drop Varn in Sci-Fights? You should actually play the 4-drop new one.
Run 4 or 5, but just run both.
Yeah, run both.
Yeah, they're both good cards.
Okay, the 7th card of Christmas. Have I got Varn in? Yes, I have. I think we talked about Braska's Final Aeon. Has to be Braska's Final Aeon.
Yeah, I was going to
7th.
say, I think
It could be Shantoto, but
Nah.
actually Shantoto's played more than BFA in this tournament.
Oh,
Yeah, but
I think
this is Tom's.
this is my show. This is the best card in the game.
Alright. Oh wow, okay, well.
Shantoto's like a New Year's Eve sort of party card.
You're not coming on as a guest in any of the
Braska's
however
Final
many
Aeon.
podcasts I've got going on right now, Tom. That's it. That's
Alright.
decided.
I'll put.
Yeah.
You can't have Shantoto. Let's have Shantoto in. We'll have
No, you're
Shantoto
okay.
in. Just for-
No, we need
just
a
for,
fire card. We need a fire card.
Just for Sean
Yeah.
Kendrick, because he has like 200 of these cards.
Oh god, yeah.
We'll put them
Oh
back
no,
in.
no, mate, they went down in value now, haven't they? Rip.
They have actually, yeah. Let's take Shantoto, you're out. Your value.
L.
For your
That's Christmas.
your
Christmas
price
cancelled.
gouging. Yeah.
Sorry, kids, I spent all my my
Right.
money on Shantotos that are now out of value.
It's an investment. 8th card of Christmas. What's 8 CP?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's Philia, Lock.
Lock.
Oh, Lock.
Lock's good.
Yeah, we can have
Yeah,
Lock.
Lock.
Just because Storm should make a comeback, I think. There we go. Lock, you're in. 9. Is it just Nidhogg?
Oh god, no.
Oh,
Can't
I mean,
just be Nidhogg. Oh,
it's
Leviathan.
Oh,
There's-
Leviathan. Leviathan.
Yeah, there's
Yasmat.
Yasmat, Shantoto, Leviathan.
I think Leviathan could get a shout. I'm surprised I didn't see more of Leviathan in that tournament.
Same.
That's
Not
a-
much water. Water got probably the most this set, I'd say.
That's a boss
There's a
card.
sheer number of good cards.
Boss card for Leviathan. And
That should-
10th day of Christmas. Now we're struggling.
There's only
Oh.
one.
Oh, Booty
Oh, there's actually
Bells.
2. There's 2. There's Arc as well.
So,
Some-
we
We can't have a dog for Christmas.
Draw one card. So
we
we're
can't
going
have a
Dark
dog for
Christmas or a Boony Vales. You always have a curry at Christmas in the UK.
Oh.
Chicken Boony. Welcome to the cards of Christmas.
Okay, sure, yeah. Put chicken boona on there.
FF Dex has run out of the card costs at 10, so I think there's only 111 CP, which is Montleonis.
On
Yes.
the 11th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me Montleonis by default.
Yep, in you go. Mitch, this is your chance to tell us why Avalanche should be Mono Earth instead of Earthfire.
No. No, it's not.
So, Mitch has been banging on that Avalanche should be Mono Earth and not Earthfire. So, well done, James, for proving him wrong at the biggest tournament of the year. In fact, during the stream, I said, "Oh, James is going to come third. He's playing Avalanche, Mitch." And he went, "Oh, is it the Mono Earth or is he playing Fire?" I was like, "No, it's Earthfire." You were very disappointed. And then the 12th day of Christmas, we discussed this before. There are no 12 CP cards in our game. So what we've done is we have combined the Wall XF play, which
6
is
CP.
the 6
12
CP
CP.
plus a 6 CP equals 12 CP.
No.
Kind of.
Well, Mitch just said earlier on that if we got Neo X Death, it's the Christmas is cancelled. So
Well-
in your head canon, if you want to imagine this, guys, that it's Wall into Neo X Death into a misplay Minfilia.
Oh,
So
yes.
that
So the Wall-
that adds
yeah.
up to 12 CP
Wall
either way.
Minfilia is the 12.
Yeah, Wall Minfilia.
Very well,
I'm
it's
just thinking
something
of-
breaking it.
I think we should do like a light and dark for the 2 6s. So we could do Herolskavir and the best card in the game, Veritas.
Veritas, yes. Recently given his legacy. Worthy of
Yeah.
a legacy.
Yeah, I think he's a great card. So I think we could just
That's been fun, guys. Yeah, fuck you later.
But just say on Xdef, it isn't the end of Christmas because it's at the end of the turn. So you can have Christmas, and then once Christmas is done, that's when it's all over. And that's probably what's going to happen for
11
us.
days of Christmas.
That's what's going to happen for us in the UK. Once Christmas is over, Boris is out. Lockdown.
New Xdef. Decent.
We did it 12 cards, although I think I've got 14 here in this list. 13. How have I done that?
Because there's 2
Who
for
got
12.
doubled in? Oh, there's 2 for 12, yes, of course.
You literally just did it.
Should I make this deck public? Yeah, we'll make that
watch
deck.
this podcast to be good at maths. Don't worry, you don't have to worry
The
about
12
it.
Yeah.
cards of Chapstiff Christmas.
I mean, we also didn't do a 1 cost, so that's just, I'm just saying.
We didn't do one.
very well.
Well, it was
We
one
did
Sophie.
fail.
One Sophie.
We failed at
and
the
a
first
Peartree.
Eldor.
What would be your
Yeah.
1 CP? A Cuchulain or a Kite?
Cuckling or kites, yeah.
We've got a
Yeah,
Varna,
but-
haven't we?
Sorry, it's
We've got every colour though, haven't we?
it's Cucullin, right? It's Cucullin.
It's very earth heavy.
Yeah. But
Well, it's just like the tournament, right? Earth 285 cards, Water 160, Earth 226. Yep. Earth heavy, just like Final Fantasy TCG right now.
Well, we did it. So that is your 12 cards of Christmas. The 12 most impactful cards in FFTCG for every CP range. Don't know how Gogo
Yeah,
got in there, but
Apart from one
Bunavels.
Arcwell.
apart from Gogo
Yeah.
And Bunavels.
and Bunavels.
That big meta card.
Yes, this has been the Christmas special. As we're in the Christmas, let me stop this music. It's driving me mad. That has been the Christmas special at Sith Get Bang. Thank you for joining us. Here's to a better 2022 for FFTCG. We'll see what happens. It's not looking good, I will say, in terms of particularly the UK outlook.
Yeah. The cards look good. Yeah,
Cards
we're,
look
we're,
good, yeah.
we're excited for that. So Octagon will be very busy in the 26th of December.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But guys, thank you for joining us. Michael, Andy, thank you for coming on. And
Thank you for having us.
no problem. And yeah, we'll see you in the new year with another podcast and hopefully some exciting events to look forward to. But until then, have a great Christmas and New Year if you celebrate it. If you don't, have a good December the 25th.
Holiday.
Holiday, yeah, if you get it off. And yeah, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.